You did one, sent me the link a couple of weeks ago on Lane Kiffin's Ole Miss team going into 2023. By the way, thanks for your time. Always good to visit. Give me a high-level thought that you have about this Ole Miss team as you kind of look at what you think they're going to have, knowing that the roster may still change a bit between now and the start of the year.
Well, I think a couple of those questions were answered when you go back and you study Trey Harris, wide receiver from La Tech, and you see obviously maybe the best receiver available in the transfer portal from UTSA that were both brought in. That, to me, Richard, answered a lot of the questions because I think a lot of times we get caught up in what happens annually. Who's gone from last year? Are they coming back this year? But in certain instances, we have seen certain people at certain positions over time actually be more problematic. I think if you look at Ohio State and cornerback, you look at Alabama defensive line, over time they're just not able to restock, and then 2-3 years down the road it catches up a little bit more. I mean, Ole Miss has had great receivers for multiple seasons now, and you just wonder, are they going to be able to keep plugging in the next guy that can be able to make plays? And they went out and got two really good ones there. So that answers a lot of questions. I think you look now at Michael Trigg at tight end and Priestcorn coming in from Memphis, what that's going to allow them to be formationally from a movement standpoint pre-snap, and then maybe even adding some physicality up front. And I think if that Ole Miss offensive line takes a step and is probably better than a lot of people believe that they are, this offense has a chance to be pretty special. Because I'm a fan of the quarterback. I'm a fan of the running back. I think he's the best returning running back in college football. And if some of those pieces around those guys are capable and more than capable, then that offense is going to be pretty special. But I think where most people are really missing the boat on this group is up front on defense. I really do believe, Richard, that with what's been added, not only a defensive coordinator, but through the portal, specifically up front in the middle of that defense, with guys like Joshua Harris, that they're going to be very different than what maybe they've ever been. And trust me, I played against Kendrick Clancy. I know how good he was. Yeah. I know how good Kindichi was. You've had guys like Benito Jones come through, but collectively, it seems like there's always been a spot or two that's been a little bit down, and you're missing somebody. And they may actually have real depth there with guys who can strike and shed, guys who can two-gap, guys who can take on blocks legitimately and not give up those big rushing lanes. And imagine if that just takes a little bit of a step, and that rush defense goes, 15, 18 spots up in the national rankings, what that would mean for that team in general, how it would protect the back end of the defense, not having to play guys down near the box, how the offense might not have to be as aggressive all the time and then put the defense in bad situations if it didn't work out. I just think that could make a massive difference if it plays out, and they've got a very bright defensive mind that's going to be leading them. And now they may have more capable bodies than they've had in quite some time on that side of the football, on the interior of that defensive line.
All right, Cole, so we saw a linebacker in the SEC emerge last year as a true freshman that turned into an all-SEC player in Harold Perkins. But that's kind of rare, kind of unique for a true freshman to step in and be as much of a game changer as he was. When you think about that position in particular, and I'm obviously referring to Centarian Perkins, the five-star linebacker from Raleigh, Mississippi, who is going to be asked to do a lot. Now, I don't know if he's going to be asked to do a lot in week 1 or week 3, but at some point he's going to be asked to do a lot because Ole Miss has kind of struggled at the linebacker position, or at least at depth at that position. Have you looked at any of what he did in high school or kind of what people think of him in terms of translating to the next level? Can he make that transition?
Yeah, I think physically, I have no doubt. And it's one of the things that I often question, Richard, is how coaches truly evaluate, because I know you've looked at some of the same stuff I have. We see high school kids, and you don't know exactly who they're going up against, how capable they are. And, things can look very different than what you may believe when you're just watching it once or twice. But the size and the speed combination, the athleticism is absolutely going to be there. Now, where Pete Golding decides to play him, I think will tell us a lot about just what he's able to maintain mentally. This is a complicated defense, make no mistake. And Pete Golding is one of the very few guys that I can sit down and talk football with and almost get completely lost. Like, he can go down some X's and O rabbit holes, and I've had to stop him before. Like,
can I tell you how much better that makes me feel? So Chris Doring and I did the spring game, and so we met with Pete Golding on Friday afternoon, and Saturday we were on the field, and I said, hey, can I be honest with you about something? And he's like, sure, what? I was like, about half of what Pete Golding said yesterday, I had no idea what he was talking about. And CD looked at me, he's like, man, there was some stuff where I had to really stop and think about what he was saying and make it make sense as well. I mean, it's like a master's or PhD level defensive mind.
He is high football IQ. I mean, to the nth degree. And trust me, Tom Hart and I have had a couple of those meetings where we've walked out and Tom's like, did you get any of that? I was like, yeah, I had him up until the last few sentences, and I wasn't 100% sure. And then, God forbid, I pull out a certain play and show it to him. And, I mean, he can go for 45 minutes on one play. But I love it. I love talking. He's one of my favorite human beings to actually talk ball with because he is so intense and so passionate about it. He's a fun guy when it comes to that. So that would be a difficult portion of it. Somebody that young that does not have that kind of experience at that level of football, and now you're going to implement a very complicated defense. But there are ways to get around that. There are ways to utilize guys on the backside of your defense. There are ways to utilize guys in more pressure situations. I mean, you can find ways to make things a little bit easier. But that will be something that will be very difficult to overcome for anybody. It doesn't matter your level of skill, your level of athleticism. In that defense, the mental portion is what's going to be the most difficult part to maintain and grasp early on.
Hey, I'm going to ask you about something. I promise I'll never ask you about it again. Frankly, I'm sick of it. But when you come on, we, as you can guess, get text messages about the Arkansas game. And I know you're weary of that. You've addressed it on Twitter. Would you, in 30 seconds, say something to Ole Miss fans to kind of put that to bed forever and we can never, ever mention it again?
If you could guarantee me that it'll never be mentioned again, I'd be happy to spend.
Well, it won't from me to you on this show. I promise you that.
All right, I'll say this. Number one, the type of broadcast that we did. If anybody didn't like that and thought that was something that they're not a fan of moving forward, I'm 100% okay with that. We tried something different. We tried to change it up a little bit, tried to do something a little bit out of the norm, and some folks didn't like it. If that's the case, I have no problem with it. I'm cool with that. There were some portions of it looking back that we probably should have done a little bit different, and I'm fine with that criticism. If you want to go back and watch it again, though, there are certain player names that I'm consistently accused of mentioning inside that game that never came out of my mouth. I made no mention of any player leaving with any coach. I made no guarantees that a coach was going to another school. And if anything, go back and listen to it and do your due diligence. I went out of my way to lay out the reasons that it would be a good idea for Lane Kiffin to stay at Ole Miss. And I know people are shaking their head and saying, oh, he's full of it, and there's no way. I know what I heard. Go back and listen. I challenge anybody. I've said it from the beginning, Richard. You've heard me say it. If you can go find a clip of me saying something about an individual player leaving with Lane Kiffin, or if you can find an individual clip that says that I think that he's leaving or why he should leave, I'll gladly post it on my social media for everybody to see because they're not out there. I didn't do it. If you want to have a conversation with somebody else, that's fine. But those are what a lot of people have thrown at me, and they just flat out didn't happen. That's the only thing that I know to say about it. If you didn't like the way we did the game, that's cool because it's probably not going to happen again. Giving up 700 yards probably had something to do with that. But at the end of the day, we tried something that didn't work, and we'll move on.
Thanks for your time, Cole.